Hi, everybody. I'm the bearer of bad tidings. Mary asked us to keep it a little upbeat. Well, if I did that, I wouldn't have anything to say, so I could just quit right now. I was going to say, I'm going to rain on your parade, but you'll realize that's a really inappropriate metaphor as we look through these. The first slide tells you that the problems we're dealing with are not specific to this area. They're global, and all that's going to have an impact on us. I would posit the theory that the age of water wars is upon us. I think the Syrian conflict could be described as a water war. We're going to see more of that. Next slide. That was the Colorado River Basin last summer. I just saw a new one that just came out. It's a little better, but not much. Very, very similar. So you can see that we're in profound water crisis in the American West. No doubt about it. Next slide, please. Long-term aridification. We should just quit using the word drought. That doesn't make sense anymore. This is not a drought. A drought is a seasonal, temporary thing. This is a new era, and it's the era of aridification. And you can see that it's concentrated in the West. If you had a map of, Dennis, tell me if I'm right, if you had a map of public grazing leases, might correspond roughly to the dark spots on that map. That's where the low precipitation and high temps, which is the next slide, is occurring. It's getting hotter. It's not just getting drier, it's getting hotter. And it's getting hotter. This isn't some kind of long-term predictive model. It's here, it's now, it's outside your door. That's kind of ironic when we just had one of the best snowstorms we've had all winter long here at the end of May, but it's here, and this is also part of the new reality. Of course, you cannot divorce temperature, precipitation, and the impact it has on everything from grazing to recreation. They're all intimately connected. And increasing temperatures means even if it did rain more, we would get less of it. So it's like a double whammy. Next slide, please. This is Lake Powell. This is the Bureau of Reclamation's forecast. They tend to be overly optimistic. If you look at their more pessimistic assessment there, the lines towards the bottom, you'll see that the end of hydropower production at Glen Canyon is probably going to occur either this year or next year. That's going to be a game changer, the end of hydropower. And the only thing that saved us from doing that this year is they robbed water from 3 other reservoirs that also create hydropower. They basically drained Blue Mesa. Now they're drawing down heavily in Flaming Gorge and Navajo. So it's a short-term fix of the last resort that delayed the inevitable. Next slide. And I don't, if you can see it, Lake Mead. Same thing. If you see the bottom wave of the line, it gets close to something called Tier 2, which is the next stage of dramatic cutbacks in water use in the Colorado River. We're veering dangerously close to that. Good probability we'll go down to Tier 2, which is based on the elevation of Lake Mead, within the next year or two, unless we have some kind of miracle summer. Nobody's predicting that. I think that's my last slide. This mean for grazing, agriculture? What's it mean for you? The happy face I'm going to put on it is that everything I'm going to talk about is all ultimately decided by politics. We can talk about the facts on the ground, the science, all day long, but sooner or later, it all becomes political. And we live in a corrupt political system, but we live in an open and responsive political system. It does respond. You can make a difference. Every one of you is potentially powerful. Every one of you could be an agent of change and help solve these problems, okay? So don't listen to this and say it's hopeless and I'm just going to get drunk and party for the rest of my life. I tried that. It didn't work that well. Say, get active. Say, I'm going to do something about this. This is a solvable problem. All of these are solvable problems, but they take profound change. And profound change only happens when we have profound change agents. And when you go home, I want you to look in the mirror and say, there's the profound change agent right there. It's not your neighbor. It's not somebody down the street. It's not somebody on the news. It is you. And I think that's a very positive message. Now, having said that, how's that going to affect public lands management and grazing? First of all, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure to reduce dust pollution. Dust pollution settles on snow, and it's something called the albedo effect. If you want to understand the albedo effect, just go outside in the summertime and wear one black shoe and one white shoe. And other than people calling you crazy, you're going to find out immediately what the albedo effect is. If you put dust on snow, it gets hot and it melts and it evaporates. It doesn't just run off, it evaporates. And that means it goes someplace else. So there will be a dramatic effort to reduce dust. And that means everything from construction sites to public lands that are overgrazed. Having ground cover is going to be part of the solution of our water problems. And we have to recognize that and start thinking about that. Second, groundwater mining. One of the alleged solutions that people are looking at to solve our problems is to mine groundwater. Mining groundwater means the withdrawal exceeds the resupply. So it lowers the water table. When you lower the water table, it has a profound impact on surface flora. It desiccates the landscape. All those plants die, they dry up. Then you have a dust bowl. Then you make cities like Salt Lake unlivable. It dries up springs. And there's a direct link between groundwater and surface water. It dries up surface water. You may hear this and say, well, it's really silly to engage in groundwater mining. Many of the solutions being discussed by water promoters is to engage in precisely that. Huge plan, cost $15 billion for Las Vegas, Clark County, to go out and pump water from the Great Basin. A horrible idea. Horrible idea. That would be an air pollution disaster for everybody that lives along the Wasatch Front. We cannot let that happen. That's been killed, but it's kind of like the great water phoenix. It just keeps popping back up every time we think it's dead. Las Vegas is in abject crisis. When the water was handed out in 1922, there were 2,000 people in Clark County. Today, there's 2 million, and they don't have enough water. They get their water from Lake Mead. They just stuck an extra intake right at the very bottom of Lake Mead. So they're going to suck that baby dry right down to the very last drop. And then what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Another groundwater mining idea, the Central Arizona Project, junior water rights, it's going dry. When we get to Tier 2, primarily CAP water will dry up, and we're going to see an end to water in the CAP. I once sat on a panel like this next to the director of the CAP, and I confidently predicted that someday, does everybody know what the CAP is? I should probably, it goes from the Colorado River across one of the hottest deserts in America in an open canal to Phoenix and then down to Tucson. All right, so it takes Colorado River water to Phoenix and Tucson. I confidently predicted that one day the CAP would be the world's longest skateboard park because it's not going to have any water in it. So he was not too happy about that, but now they're desperate, and so now they're talking about mining groundwater. They're going to mine groundwater and stick it in the CAP in a desperate effort to keep it alive. We cannot let that happen. That's craziness piled on top of insanity. There are people who are serious about this. So groundwater mining. If you want to see an end to grazing, just mine groundwater. Now, it'll put an end to healthy public lands, recreation, and everything else. Everybody needs to be paying attention to that. Declining precipitation. When I hear that, that just doesn't sound like it has the gravitas that we need. It doesn't have the emotional impact. But Dennis told me I couldn't use the F word today, so we're going to stick with a declining precipitation. The gap between demand and supply is already significant, and it's growing. If we maintain the current growth curve, which is frankly impossible, that gap simply grows larger. How are they going to get the water? I'm going to tell you where they're going to try to get the water. One option is to recognize that you cannot have infinite growth in a finite system. Now, I'm not a math professor, but I think that's true. But even something as obvious as that does not register with many people in the American West. They see infinite growth. That's their measure of success. It can't happen. So are we going to have a sustainable, realistic water policy? Well, first, they're going to try to find the water someplace else. One place they're going to look is at outrageously insane, what they call augmentation projects. Augmentation is a fancy word for trying to steal the water from somebody else. So they're talking about pipelines to the Missouri or the Mississippi, or a pipeline to the Yukon, or towing icebergs. The whack-a-mamie stuff out there is, all these ideas are sort of gaining new validity in the minds of the water developers, because that's how desperate they are. These are crazy ideas. The second place they're going to try to get it is from Native Americans. Native Americans have a significant amount of water that's been quantified and allocated to them, but they don't use it. They don't use it because we generously funded white agriculture and always grossly underfunded or defunded Native American agriculture. So we don't fund their projects, we just fund projects for white people that divert water away from Indian reservations. However, they've won notable victories in the courts. Those have now been solidified in a series of settlements. And they may be interested in marketing that water. It's entirely up to them, but there will be a tremendous effort on them to do so. And there will be a certain element in the population that absolutely abhors the idea of paying Indians for water. Absolutely opposed to it. It's just racism. That's what it is. It's just racism. So that's the first two alleged sources. The third one is going to be agriculture, and the easiest target to hit is going to be hay farmers. The water that we put on the hay is now worth more than the hay. That economic irrationality will play itself out as we enter this new era of crisis in the Colorado River Basin and throughout the West, not just here. I just saw the drought map of California for this year. It's almost all in extreme or significant drought. So this isn't just the Colorado River. It's all over the place. So we're going to see hay farms dried up and allocated to subdivisions. Now, I'll tell you, I'd much rather live next to a hay farm than a subdivision, than yet another million people. I just don't think that's the direction it's going. We're going to see the million people move in, and they're going to dry up hay farms. So there's going to be a lot less feed for livestock coming out of the American West. I just think that's what's going to happen. Now, by way of conclusion, what this means is that you can view this as a crisis, or you can see this as an opportunity. My saying is everybody becomes a water reformer. When you turn on the tap, no water comes out. Nobody says, oh, I have no water, I'm in favor of the status quo. Okay? So this is actually an opportunity to make fundamental changes at this crisis point. And we can do that. And unlike the last time we allocated water, this time Native Americans will be a significant voice. They'll be a huge part of the discussion. They're big-time players now. And this time we need to focus on water justice for everybody. We didn't do that the last time. We negotiated the Colorado River Compact in 1922, a bunch of white guys driving around in Model Ts. Does anybody really think that's a sound foundation for going forward? We need a new law of the river. We need a new concept of prior appropriation. We need a new water ethic. And these are not pie-in-the-sky ideas. They will happen because there's not enough water to sustain the old, non-sustainable, economically irrational system that we've had for the last 100 years. That system worked when there was a surplus of water. It will not work when there's a scarcity of water. I wish I was young, like many of you, because you get to be at the table. You're going to be one of the people who's going to oversee a complete remake of our water system, our energy systems, the way we relate to the environment. What a marvelous career opportunity you have as young people. And for us older people, well, let's hope they do a good job. Thank you.